A single flash of light captures his image, those cold, dead eyes staring back through the lens. Within days, your car breaks down, your relationship falls apart, you lose your job. Now, you find yourself writing a desperate letter to a century-old doll, begging for forgiveness for a transgression you never realized you committed. I'm Carol Ann, and welcome to the InBetween. Key West, Florida. A paradise of swaying palm trees, turquoise waters, and colorful Victorian mansions. But hidden among these picturesque streets lies something far less inviting. A relic so ominous that grown men have fled from its presence. An object so cursed that thousands of apologetic letters arrive yearly from people who dared to mock it. And while Annabelle might have Hollywood's attention, ask any paranormal researcher worth their salt who commands the most respect in the haunted doll community, and they'll point you to the sailor-suited figure locked behind plexiglass at the Fort East Martello Museum. His pale, weathered face has gazed upon over a century of human suffering, and some say he's caused most of it himself. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery of Robert the Doll. And I should warn you now, if you're the type to scoff at the supernatural, you might want to consider asking Robert's permission before continuing, just to be safe. Because as thousands of cursed visitors have learned the hard way, Robert doesn't forgive. Robert is a nearly 4-foot-tall fabric doll with a sailor suit, blank expression, and beady black eyes, presumably made by the Steiff Company in Germany, the same people who created the teddy bear. But he wasn't made to be a toy. He's a one-of-a-kind that researchers say was made as part of a store window display. But how did this oversized toy find its way into the hands of Gene Otto and his family? Good question. Like many legends that span generations, Robert has more than one origin story. Some accounts claim that Robert was a gift from Eugene Otto's grandfather who'd been traveling through Europe and wanted to bring back something special for his grandson. A simple story of family affection, nothing sinister or supernatural. But there's another origin story that's way more creepy. According to this darker version, Robert was given to young Eugene by a servant working in the Otto household named Emmeline Abbots, who some claim was well-versed in the arts of voodoo. And Emmeline was not happy with the Otto family. Some say she was simply fired for practicing voodoo, while others suggest something a little spicier involving an affair, a pregnancy, a miscarriage, and major feelings of betrayal thrown in for good measure. See, Thomas Otto, Eugene's dad and presumptive cheater, owned 2 pharmacies. The story goes that he perhaps might have been able to do something to stop the miscarriage, but didn't. Whether it's true or just wishful thinking on Emmeline's part is unknown. Now, whether Emmeline cursed the doll and gave it to Eugene as revenge against his father for the loss of her baby, or Eugene got the doll from his grandfather and Emmeline just cursed the doll is anybody's guess. But shortly thereafter, strange things begin happening in the Otto household. The year's 1904, and 4-year-old Robert Eugene Otto loves his new playmate who's almost as tall as he is. Little Robert and his doll instantly become inseparable. But within weeks, the boy, born as Robert Otto, announces one day that he now wants to be called by his middle name, Eugene. Of course, his parents ask why, and little Robert tells them the doll told him that it wanted his name. And so it is that the doll becomes Robert and the boy becomes Eugene, a change that will remain for the rest of Eugene's life. From the beginning, the relationship between Eugene and Robert is unusually intense. The doll is treated not as a toy, but as a member of the family. He sits in his own chair at the dinner table. He sleeps in Eugene's bed every night. The sailor suit that Robert still wears to this day is said to have belonged to Eugene himself. But it isn't long before strange things start to happen in the Otto household. Eugene's parents often hear their son in his room chatting happily with his doll. Nothing unusual about that. It's his friend, right? The problem comes when they hear a second voice responding to Eugene, a voice much deeper and more mature than Eugene's. They ask him about it, but Eugene just shrugs and says he isn't making the second voice. That's just Robert talking. Visitors to the Otto home report feeling uneasy in Robert's presence. Some even swear his expression changes when no one is looking directly at him. Just a subtle shift in the eyes or mouth, nothing they can prove, but enough to make the hairs on the back of their neck stand at attention. Eugene's other toys begin to turn up mutilated. Arms torn off dolls, stuffed animals ripped open, wooden toys smashed beyond repair. When his parents ask him what in the world is going on, Eugene's response is always the same. Robert did it. One night, Eugene's parents are jolted awake by the sound of Eugene screaming in terror. They run to his room, only to find the door won't open. It's not locked. Something seems to be physically holding it shut from the inside. When they finally manage to barge their way in, they find Eugene curled up, shaking in his bed, with his room totally wrecked. The only item untouched in the chaos is Robert, sitting at the foot of the bed, watching with his lifeless button eyes. Eugene, freaked out, points at the doll. Robert did it. He doesn't like my other toys. And it doesn't stop. Things in the house move on their own. Disembodied giggling and footsteps on the stairs at night. Servants start to quit without explanation. They just pack their stuff and go, not even bothering with their final paycheck. Finally, Eugene's great aunt has had enough. During a visit to the Otto home, she takes matters into her own hands. She grabs Robert and takes him up to the attic and locks him in a trunk. Eugene is inconsolable. That night, they hear loud knocking sounds coming from the attic, like something's trying to bust out of that trunk. By morning, the knocking has stopped, but then they get the news. Eugene's great aunt died suddenly during the night. The official cause is listed as a stroke, but was it? Or was it Robert's revenge? If it was Robert, didn't do him any good. He stays locked in that trunk. Eugene eventually grows up and moves to Paris to study art, and Robert is seemingly forgotten. However, strange things are still happening in the Otto household. The sound of small footsteps pattering across the attic floor, giggling echoing through the house, and occasional glimpses of something small and white darting through the shadows. In 1945, after the death of his mother, Eugene Otto returns to his childhood home in Key West. Now a successful artist, he brings with him his wife, Annette Parker Otto, and the two make plans to move into the house, and Eugene wants to convert the corner turret into an art studio where he can continue his painting career. Upon entering the house for the first time in years, Eugene suddenly freezes mid-sentence and races upstairs. Annette, wondering what in the world is going on, hears the sound of rummaging coming from the attic, followed by Eugene's footsteps coming back down the stairs. When Eugene reappears, he is tenderly cradling something in his arms. Robert. After decades of separation, Eugene is reunited with his childhood friend. And just like that, this now grown man immediately falls back into his old patterns, treating the doll as a living entity. He has furniture custom made for Robert. He speaks to the doll for hours, apparently receiving responses that only he can hear. Annette is not exactly on board with this new third partner in their marriage. She never actually saw Robert move on his own, but just being around him creeps her out. There's something about those black, beady eyes that seem to follow her everywhere. Eugene begins to change too. He's more irritable, argumentative, and sometimes even cruel. Annette confronts him about his behavior, but Eugene's response echoes his childhood excuses. Robert did it. Eugene and Annette's relationship deteriorates as his fixation on the doll grows stronger. Eventually, Annette gives him an ultimatum. Either Robert goes or I go. Eugene says, fine, you win. I'll put him in my studio. But keeping Robert in that studio turret room only seems to amplify the weirdness in the house. Neighbors and people just passing by see the doll moving from window to window when the house is supposed to be empty. The neighborhood kids walking to school in the mornings start taking different routes so they don't have to go by the Otto house, claiming that Robert watches them from the windows, sometimes tapping on the glass or waving. Inside the house, Annette reports hearing footsteps and childlike giggling coming from the turret room when Eugene is away. And things around the house start disappearing and showing back up again in odd places. During a dinner party, the conversation comes to a screeching halt by the distinct sound of footsteps on the floor above, followed by that unmistakable giggling. The embarrassed Ottos try to tell everyone, oh, it's just rats in the attic. You know it's bad when rats are a better excuse than a possessed doll. But their guests aren't convinced. They're all like, sorry, gotta go now, and they never come back. One night, Annette wakes up and Eugene's not in bed. She goes to look for him and hears voices coming from the turret room. Eugene's intermingled with another voice she doesn't know. She walks in and sees Eugene and Robert sitting across from each other, engaged in what appears to be an intense conversation. When she comes in, Eugene abruptly stops talking and looks up at her with an expression she later describes as not quite my husband. Gene Otto dies in 1974. Some say his death is peaceful, while others claim he is found in the turret room, slumped before Robert as if the doll had exacted a more permanent claim on Eugene. After Eugene's death, Annette is a little dismayed to find out she's been cut out of her husband's will. All she gets is the house and the stuff in it. So she packs Robert back into the trunk in the attic, sells the house, and is dust in the wind. Little does she know that Robert's influence is far from over. When Annette sells the house in 1974, the Otto mansion is bought by one Myrtle Reuter, who apparently is unaware of the house's strange history or of its infamous resident lurking in the attic. But it doesn't take long before Myrtle begins to experience the same phenomena. At first, it's subtle, the feeling of being watched, objects not being quite where she had left them. Then come the sounds. Footsteps overhead, childlike giggling. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a touch of that human compulsion that kills the cat every time, Myrtle decides to investigate the attic, where she, of course, finds the trunk. She opens it and finds Robert, still dressed in his sailor suit, staring up at her with those beady black eyes. Rather than it freaking her out, Myrtle is oddly charmed by the antique doll.
Are you out of your mind?
She brings him downstairs and gives him a place of honor in her living room. With Robert now having free reign of the house again, the odd happenings ramp up. Neighbors report seeing through the windows the doll's position change throughout the day, even when Myrtle isn't home. One neighbor finally breaks down and tells Myrtle, your house has a bit of a history. He tells her all about Robert's history with the Otto family, including how the local kids avoided the house because Robert was watching them from the windows, just like he's watching the neighbors today. But unlike Annette, who was not afraid to tell people how much she hated that doll, Myrtle develops a peculiar affection for Robert. She dresses him in pajamas at Christmas and sets him by the tree. She talks to him as if he's a friend rather than a 100-year-old toy. But I guess this is what Robert was waiting for, because their cozy little arrangement goes on for over 6 years. Weird, but to each his own. But in 1980, something changes. Myrtle decides to move to a new home on Von Pfister Street. And now that Robert is hers, she just brings him along. she obviously didn't ask him what he wanted. Big mistake. Shortly after the move, Myrtle wakes up in the middle of the night. She gets up to get herself a glass of water, but the door won't open. It's not locked, but no matter how hard she pulls, it won't budge, as if something on the other side is holding it closed. Whatever goes down in that room that night is between Robert and Myrtle. But whatever it is, she's terrified enough that the very next morning, she throws him in her car, drives directly to the Fort East Martello Museum, and says, "Here, you can have him. I'm done. And by the way, he's haunted by the spirit of a little kid. Have a nice day." 3 months later, Myrtle Reuter is dead. The official cause of death has never been publicly released, adding more fuel to Robert's fire. Is it coincidence? Or did Robert really just not want to move? Whatever happened, because of Myrtle's donation, the curse of Robert the doll is about to go public. When Robert arrives at the Fort East Martello Museum, staff doesn't quite know what to do with him. So they catalog him and put him in storage.
Stack 'em, pack 'em, and rack 'em.
Until they can decide what to do with him. But it doesn't take long for the museum staff to start experiencing strange phenomena. Security guards report seeing a small white blur moving through the storage area after hours. Electronics malfunction when brought near the doll. Some employees claim to feel suddenly ill or dizzy when handling Robert. One night, a curator is working late preparing a display case for Robert. What happens inside that museum? No one knows. She's not talking, but other staff members see her come running out of the building, screaming, vowing to never, ever work with that doll again. Word gets out about shenanigans happening at the museum, and visitor interest in Robert starts to grow. The museum starts getting requests from people asking specifically to see the haunted doll. 2 years after his arrival, Robert is finally given his own display case, complete with a small stuffed lion as a companion. This is about when the idea of Robert's curse begins to take shape. Visitors trying to take pictures of Robert report strange technical difficulties. Camera batteries suddenly go dead, but work perfectly again after they leave the museum. Photos come back blurry with unexplained light anomalies, or simply fail to save at all. Some visitors who laugh at or mock Robert find themselves experiencing unusual streaks of bad luck after leaving the museum. Car accidents, broken relationships, unexpected illnesses, job losses. As these stories spread, a pattern emerges. Those who show respect to Robert by asking his permission before taking his picture seem to be fine. Those who do not are not fine. In response, the museum establishes a protocol for interacting with Robert. Visitors are now advised to politely introduce themselves to the doll, ask permission before taking his photograph, and thank him before leaving his presence. And warn that failure to follow these rules might result in incurring Robert's wrath. The wall next to Robert's display case has become a testament to the power many believe he possesses. It's covered with hundreds of letters from people around the world, all begging for Robert's forgiveness.
Dear Robert, I visited your museum 3 weeks ago and took your picture without asking. Since then, I've been in a car accident, lost my job, and my dog ran away. Please forgive me. I mean you no disrespect.
Robert, I apologize for laughing at you during my visit. I didn't believe in your powers. After 3 broken appliances, a flooded basement, and a broken arm, I'm a believer now. Please lift this curse.
These letters come from people of all backgrounds, skeptics, believers, young, old, locals, and international visitors. What unites them is their conviction that Robert has somehow reached out across space and time to punish them for their disrespect. And that's not even including all of the apologies posted to him online in places like Facebook and Reddit. In January of 2015, one Reddit poster named Sleepy Woke Bloke, so we'll call him Blake, wrote Robert a nasty email thinking it was pretty funny. Within a month, he and his girlfriend get evicted from their townhouse while they're on vacation. When they come back, they find themselves locked out. Nothing left but the clothes in their backpacks. With what little they have, they stuffed in Blake's car. They go stay with a friend while they figure things out. Blake then gets an infection that earns him a hospital stay. While he's in the hospital, his girlfriend cheats on him with his best friend, and those two run off together with the rest of Blake's stuff. So now, Blake's living out of his car. Thankfully, he's 49% owner of a company, so maybe he'll be able to get back on his feet. No. His business partner, the 51% owner, sells the company out from under him and claims all the profits are eaten up by the company's debt. Blake finds enough small jobs to keep from starving, but gets busted for having a concealed machete in his car, something he bought so he could do landscaping work. And things get even worse for him from there. However, it's not very family-friendly content, so we'll just stop there. But he ends his post saying that he had totally forgotten about the ugly email to Robert until now. And he would be writing an apology to Robert as quickly as possible. One of the most well-known victims of Robert's alleged curse is rock legend Ozzy Osbourne, who visited the doll with his son Jack and then promptly destroyed a smaller replica doll. Yes, a mere $40 can get you a smaller replica version. And subsequently experienced a terrible year that included pneumonia, a serious fall requiring surgery, a staph infection in his thumb, and a Parkinson's disease diagnosis. So please note, these smaller replicas seem to carry the same mojo as the original. You've been warned. But perhaps the most chilling case involves a ghost tour guide named Ed who worked for Key West Ghost Tours. After getting a tattoo of Robert on his arm, against his boss's advice, he's found dead on his couch just days later. According to Brant Voss, Ed's boss at the time, he and Ed talk just a few days after Ed gets the tattoo. Ed tells Brant that he feels sick after getting the tattoo, saying, "I think I did something wrong. This Robert the doll thing, I don't feel good." 3 days after that conversation, Ed is dead. Today, Robert sits behind plexiglass, his blank expression revealing nothing of the chaos he's allegedly caused. Museum staff report that his position sometimes changes slightly between closing time and opening the next morning, though no one has access to his case during those hours. Visitors often claim to see his expression shift or his eyes blink. Electronic equipment continues to malfunction in his presence. There's even footage of him causing a slightly deflated ball, so it doesn't roll on its own, to fall from the top of his case. And the letters keep coming, desperate pleas for forgiveness from those who believe they've fallen victim to the curse of America's most haunted doll. So what exactly is Robert? A cursed object? A vessel for a vengeful spirit? Or simply the focus of our collective imagination and anxiety? There are several theories about what might be happening with this infamous doll. The first, and perhaps the most straightforward explanation, is that Robert is indeed haunted or possessed. But by whom or what? If we consider the theory of Emmeline Abbott's, the servant who allegedly gives Robert to Eugene after losing her unborn child, one possibility is that the spirit of that child somehow attaches itself to the doll. David Sloan, an expert on Robert and author of a book about the doll, believes the entity in Robert is indeed the spirit of Emmeline's miscarried child, whom he calls Abby. Since she is the love child of the affair between Eugene's dad and Emmeline, this would make her Eugene's half-sister, which would then explain why she looks out for Eugene. Several visitors to the museum have reported seeing the apparition of a young girl with curly brown hair near Robert's display case, adding weight to this theory. But the voice that people would hear talking to Eugene was a deep male voice, so I'm not sure that this one makes sense. Another theory suggests that it's Eugene Otto's spirit that inhabits the doll. The artist's unnatural attachment to Robert throughout his life might have created a psychic bond so powerful that, upon death, Eugene's consciousness transfers into the toy that has been his constant companion. This would explain why the doll seems particularly vengeful toward anyone who mocks or disrespects it. They're essentially insulting Eugene himself. Except, Eugene has been talking to Robert since he was a little kid. So this phenomena has been happening for way too long for it to be Eugene himself. Of course, there are more skeptical explanations as well. The phenomenon known as pareidolia, our tendency to see faces and patterns where none exist, might explain why so many people perceive changes in Robert's expression. The power of suggestion combined with the doll's undeniably creepy appearance could be enough to trick our brains into seeing movement where there is none. As for the curse itself, we can't rule out good old confirmation bias, chance, and rotten life choices. Those who believe in Robert's powers might be more likely to attribute everyday misfortunes to his influence. But then again, those who believe in him are usually the ones who respect him from the beginning. It's the non-believers who mock him that experience Robert's wrath and come crawling back as believers. Some paranormal researchers suggest that Robert might be what's known as a thought form or an egregore, an entity created and strengthened by collective belief. So maybe it's not that Robert was inherently haunted from the beginning, but rather that decades of fear, belief, and attention have gradually given him a kind of psychic energy that can now influence the physical world. Interestingly, in 1997, a seance is conducted in the old Otto house. Paranormal investigators report hitting an invisible barrier when attempting to enter the attic where Robert spent so many years. When they finally managed to push through, they claim to witness orbs of light shooting all around and then leaving in different directions. A psychic who remains downstairs during this event reports feeling the spirit of Robert pass through them. That means that even without the physical doll present, Robert's influence lingers in the home where he spent most of his existence. Whatever the truth behind Robert's powers, one thing is certain. The effect he has on those who encounter him is very real. Whether it's psychosomatic or supernatural, the fear he inspires is powerful enough to send thousands of letters of apology flooding into the museum each year. Today, Robert remains one of the most visited attractions in Key West, drawing thousands of curious tourists and paranormal enthusiasts. But Robert's influence extends far beyond the walls of his museum home. He's become a cultural icon, featured in countless books, documentaries, and paranormal TV shows. His story has inspired horror films like Chucky in the Child's Play series and served as the blueprint for other fictional haunted dolls in pop culture. The Otto House, now operating as a bed and breakfast called the Artist House, continues to report strange phenomena. Guests claim to hear footsteps in empty hallways, childlike giggling in vacant rooms, and some have even reported seeing the apparition of a small boy, maybe Eugene, running through the house laughing. The turret room, where Robert spent so many years with Eugene, is said to be particularly active. Is it possible that Robert is still in that house, like the seance participants suggest? Or is it simply that the legend has become so entrenched in local lore that visitors to the Artist House expect to experience something strange, and therefore they do? Museum staff report that even after years of working around Robert, they never quite get used to his presence. They maintain a ritual of greeting him every morning and saying goodbye every night just to be safe. Some refuse to be alone with him after dark, and others won't turn their backs on his display case. And the letters continue to arrive daily. Desperate pleas from people around the world who believe they're suffering under Robert's curse. Each one is carefully placed near his display case in the hope that he might read them and grant forgiveness. Perhaps most telling of all is that in this age of skepticism and scientific rationality, thousands of people still feel compelled to apologize to a doll, to admit in writing that they believe this century-old toy has reached across time and space to punish them for their disrespect. Is Robert truly haunted? Does he harbor a vengeful spirit bent on teaching the disrespectful a lesson? Or is he simply a blank canvas onto which we project our own fears and anxieties? In the end, it doesn't really matter, because whether Robert's power comes from beyond the grave or from the depths of our own psyches, its effect is the same. That feeling of uneasiness that follows you home after staring at those black glass eyes through the glass case. A lingering doubt that makes you question whether that streak of bad luck you seem to be having is just coincidence or something more. And if you've made it this far into our story, perhaps you too might feel a strange compulsion to address the sailor-suited doll directly. To say, just in case, "I'm sorry, Robert. I meant no disrespect." After all, it can't hurt to be polite, right? Now I gotta add Key West to my bucket list. Add that to Bold Street in Liverpool, the pyramids at Giza, the Alaska Triangle, just to name a few. My bucket list is getting out of control. If you found this deep dive of Robert the Doll intriguing and would like to watch another reason to keep the lights on while you sleep tonight, click right here. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.